The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. We're brought to you by OMVIC and Crown, and I'm joined today by Debbie Arnold. She's with Sound Insurance, and Pete Karageorgos. You're with the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Insurance is always a hot topic, so this year we're getting to it several times, I hope, during the season, which is great. I'd like to ask you guys, when consumers, viewers, readers, they're all the same thing actually, when I need an insurance quote, I'm looking at all the stuff online, and some of those ones go, if you want a quote, go here. And so you go through it, you fall down a rabbit hole, you answer all their questions, and they go, if you want the quote now, you have to give us your number so that we will call you. And you're going, nah, not going to do that. What's the best way in either market, nationally or in Ontario, what's the best way to get a quote? How many should you get? How do you go about it? Who should you not listen to?
This is a loaded question for me because I have a certain bias. I am a broker. I've been a broker for 35 years.
You talked me into using a broker, though.
Yes, because I think you need an advocate. Insurance is not simple, and unfortunately in Ontario and in other provinces, it's treated more like a commodity now, and those online quotes, oh, they're wonderful, and it never pops up, and it's great until you actually get the policy and your premium's much higher because they've now delved into your insurance history, and there's been no conversation on those online platforms. With dealing with a broker, we're looking at a plethora of insurance companies. So at Sound Insurance, we have 18 insurance companies. We do a group home and auto program for APA members, so they get a discount. There's a lot that a broker can offer that a direct writer who has that one product, that one experience, that's all they have to offer, where a broker has a broad scope of knowledge.
Do we pay more using a broker?
No, not necessarily.
And there's, similar to a broker, there's companies that sell through agents, and those are, again, many of them have offices in the community. They're that individual that just sells for that one company. So there's also, as we talked about, the direct writers. Those you can access them through online or call centers. So it depends on a person's choice and preference. There are differences through each of those models. At the end of the day, it really comes down to being a wise consumer and a wise shopper, asking those questions. And so, yes, brokers can answer your questions. They can also shop around for you. And so there is different types of benefits to each of those systems, depending on what consumers looking for.
What I found, and I'm going to cut you off, sorry, because I'm getting to be representative of a demographic I never thought I'd be in, the older one. Those neighborhood ones, which I really liked, and I had the broker that I knew by name because they're part of the community, that's what they sell themselves on. When you go to buy your policy, you're in that little neighborhood feel. As soon as you make a claim, you're 800 numbering it to somewhere where you're going, what? Like, what happened? So there's a disconnect for me. And I thought, well, if I'm already dealing with this, I'm going to start shopping around for, that little personal edge was gone. And I'm not panning the local people, but they do their side, which is selling it, and then it's gone after that. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
It is and it isn't. I mean, when you do have a claim, you're going directly to the insurance company, or the broker is reporting the claim to you, to the insurance company. If there's an issue with that claim, you can come back to the broker saying, the adjuster's not getting back to me, or they've only offered me so much for my car, I think it's worth more. And that's where you have the advocate in a broker that you don't necessarily have through an agent, because it's very compartmentalized in the direct writer model. So claims is claims, service is service. They don't meet. You have to speak to your claims representative if there's any issues. When you have a broker, you have that middle layer that can liaison with the insurance company, and we're generally more successful with having those arguments with insurance companies, and I love arguing with insurance companies. It's one of my favorite things. So,
most people's least favorite, you freak.
Hey, that's why I do what I do.
I like that I can call you if something's happened. I can ask you questions, and if I call the insurance company, they're typing away every single thing I say the second I ask. They are
pretty much, yeah.
At IBC, we're the trade association, so we represent those companies that actually sell the products, through the brokers or through the direct writers. But we also have the Consumer Information Center, and so we staff with experienced insurance people, and people can ask anonymously if they want questions. They can get a second opinion. Sometimes they may be told one thing and just are checking to see if that is valid. It's like going to the doctor and getting a second opinion. And so we have that service that's available and free for people to call during regular business hours. So people can even contact us at the Insurance Bureau of Canada for advice and for answers to their questions too.
That's good for people to know.
Oh,
Because it's so
absolutely.
confusing and you're always scared you're going to say the wrong thing.
And that's a wonderful tool too, because there is insurance, as I've said, it's not easy. It's complicated.
Well, nobody reads their policies
Exactly. Until something goes wrong.
Yeah,
until you need to access your insurance.
and then they find out, wait, my deductible's what? But somebody is trying to keep your rate down when they sold it to you, and they go, well, we can take it down this much if we put your deductible up in the clouds. And
that's not really realistic anymore. I mean, the premium's so thin on physical damage anyways. To increase your deductible, you're saving $30 a year. I don't encourage my clients to do that on the auto side. Property is a little different, but definitely on auto. Somebody's selling you a higher deductible, ask them the difference.
Okay, we're going to come back and talk some more about this because it's so much fun. We'll be back with more Lemonade right after this break. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm here with Debbie Arnold and Pete Karageorgos. Pete, it's your turn. Insurance we're talking about.
Well, we've got at IBC, the Insurance Bureau of Canada, we've got all sorts of resources also available for consumers. We see a lot of issues across Canada. Consumers can, if they have a particular question, a particular need, interest, they can check out our website. There's all sorts of resources available. And insurance, right now on the auto insurance side, we're seeing various problems throughout the various provinces that we operate and that companies are seeing. It's a hardening market. There's challenges over there. But we're there to, again, answer people's questions and provide support and advice for consumers. We know insurance can be confusing.
I want to ask you both one thing, or to explain maybe more fully. When you have a collision, and especially here, they'll say, clear it. If you can drive the car, get it off main roads because of the congestion in Toronto is just a nightmare. A lot of people go, no, I have to leave the cars right where they are so the police, when they get here, will know exactly what happened. Insurance adjusters know how to read the tea leaves.
So does the Collision Reporting Center.
Yeah, like they can see when the paint is rubbed from here to here. So people shouldn't, I think, not be so worried about that actual thing because they can read.
And the police aren't going to come for claims that are under $2,000 in Ontario, or if there's no bodily injury.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If there's no injuries and it's a fender bender, get it off the road and exchange information.
And take your photo. You can take photos
And
of people's
I would
stuff.
suggest to each person involved in the accident to take a quick photo of the plate in case that person that's hit you decides to take off.
Yes.
That would be a really good idea. Because unfortunately, there are some unsavory individuals out there.
Sometimes some people are driving without insurance. So they may not be telling you the whole story in terms of what they're, so exchange information with them.
Yeah, never, ever say, don't report this and I won't report it and I'll take care of it. I've decided people should never, ever do that.
No, don't do that. You need to have some documentation and the information on the other party that you're involved in the loss.
I know somebody, they made that agreement and they were trying to keep to it because it was small. The other party just went and reported it.
Exactly.
They said they weren't going to, but they did.
Exactly.
So,
And take notes in terms of, either record it, on a cell phone, voice note, or somehow or other. How many people were in the other vehicle? Because we've seen situations where maybe just the drivers in each car, and then you find out when you're talking to your insurance representative, your adjuster, that there's 4 or 5 people who are claiming to be injured in the other vehicle.
they were in the trunk.
And so, they're somewhere that sort of magically appeared, and now they're claiming for injuries. And so it's important to also, if you can, if there's witnesses, take witness information as well, but steer it, clear it, and make sure, especially in minor crashes, as we said, if there's no injuries, the police won't arrive. If there's no criminal, drinking and driving, if there's no suspicion of that or third-party property damage, the police won't show up. So police more and more are directing people to the collision reporting centers, but be also cautious of tow truck operators who magically appear on the scene and are directing or guiding you. Don't sign any blank work orders or agree to anything. Take the time, speak to your insurance representative after you've gone to the collision reporting center.
I think people sometimes underestimate if you've been in a collision, even if it's minor, you're rattled, you're in shock, like you're not expecting this ever. And when it does happen, you think you know what to do, and you forget the dumbest things. And you can keep a check sheet. You can get it from CAA online. Actually,
Well, there's
you can download
we
it.
included in our little liability cards. You know what? Use your phone.
Yeah.
Take pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know very many people that don't have a camera on their phone.
Yeah.
And when you do take a picture of the other person's liability card, their ownership, their driver's license number, 3 things.
You have to write it down.
You know,
then.
just remember 3 things. You need 3 things: the ownership, driver's license number, liability card.
I remember years and years ago, I was in a really minor collision, like in town, and I wasn't driving because I wouldn't be involved. But I got out of the car, and I was asking neighbors for a broom to sweep glass off the street. My head was like, you just don't realize it was small. And
Yeah, and many times, statistics show you may be in an accident once every 10 years, so it's not going to be a regular occurrence. And so, yes, take that information from the websites. The insurance companies, IBC also has a brochure available in terms of what to do after a crash, after a claim. Get that information. Simply take those photos. It takes no time at all to take those photos and then be on your way to the collision reporting center. But do report. You've got typically 24 hours to report that to the collision reporting centers. They do exist in most municipalities.
I think some people have to realize that they shouldn't expect the police to show up, especially if it's minor damage. And don't go to the collision reporting center. Take the time to do it, because it does, make the whole process a lot more expedient if people know how to handle their little collisions. That's very important.
And one other thing you need to do and think about ahead of time too is if you are involved in a crash, where do you want the vehicle towed to? Do you have a shop, a body shop, a garage, somewhere that you trust to do those repairs?
Or a quick call to your broker for your preferred shop.
we'll be back with more Lemonade after this break. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm joined now by Georgini, the president of the APA, and Chris Muir, our mechanic, all the time. We were talking in the previous segments with Debbie and Pete about insurance and the actual nuts and bolts of the insurance stuff. However, there's the other side of this equation when you have been in a collision and the fixing it and dealing with the fallout from that. How does the APA factor into this? I know we're an all-inclusive kind of shopping place, but when it comes to insurance and collision, I know you work with Debbie at Sound, helping people, but is there any advice you would have for people who have been involved in a collision?
Well, typically on the claim side, the questions that the APA receives most often is, where do I get it fixed? Concerns about the quality of a repair, for example, what parts might be going into the vehicle, or if your vehicle is on the cusp between being written off or getting repaired. And sometimes you don't agree with the perspective of the insurer. In some cases, you may think the vehicle should be written off. They want to get it repaired. In other cases, you love your old car, but it only has a market value of $3,000. The repairs are a little more. Yeah. And you know that for $3,000, you're never going to buy or replace the wheels you lost. So those are situations where we can be helpful.
Chris, George made a good point. I had this happen when the car, it was probably worth $3,000.
Well, actually, your car, market value, you drive a tank.
Yep.
You're going to be here after the blast.
Old cop car.
Old cop car, yeah.
Right. What's that worth on the market?
Honestly, they're super cheap. I bought mine for $2,000. About as high as I'd ever pay for one in absolutely pristine condition would probably be $5,000. If the thing gets scuffed the wrong way, it's a write-off, unfortunately. It's just one of those things, right?
Because I had to beg them to not write my car off, so I think I accepted less because I wanted to keep the car and just get it fixed because I never could have replaced that car for what, because it was in really great shape, low miles, you know.
Yeah.
But they,
And under some agreements, it's not necessarily, the repair value is not limited to the market value of the car. It could be a reasonable amount for repairs other than that value in the case of a vehicle with no market value like yours. Sorry. Yeah.
aren't we seeing though, Chris, too, that the way cars are changing, we've talked in other episodes about all the sensors and all the clips and all the things that I know once, if airbags have gone off in a small car, it's disposable.
It's disposable,
It's
yeah,
gone.
certainly it is. I mean, the more technology that we bring along, we start putting radars in the grille and sensors in the bumper and things in the wing mirror. You get a good front end smash on that car, and the technology outweighs the actual cost of the sheet metal and the structural repairs on the vehicle just to replace the sensors, that the accoutrements, shall we call them, of the vehicle. So the more technologically advanced, the more expensive to repair the vehicle ultimately is. Again, going back to my tank, I can wipe a fender off the thing, bolt on a new fender, and drive it back down the road. It's not so with most modern unitized body vehicles.
If I had to narrow down my mail to 3 parts that people are most shocked about, it's side mirrors,
Oh, now the ones with the cameras in them. could
everything,
be up
because they're
to-
all wired in.
Thousands
and
of
Puddle
dollars.
lamps and the turn signals.
Oh.
Because back
so
in the
that's
day,
hurt.
a side mirror from bolted on, like
Yep.
literally.
Yeah.
So they're always shocked that those can cost thousands of dollars sometimes. Bumpers, because what's beneath the skin of the bumper.
And light boxes, I would say, the headlamps. now,
Headlamps.
The composite headlamps
They're
are
part
very,
of the
very.
structure of the car. They're not just, and even bulbs, you can't access it half the time.
I find even paint finish people are surprised at how much it is to blow in a scratch or to match paint between a door and a fender now. It is truly an art, and to have it done properly, you pay really steeply for it.
So I think that's why I think when people are questioning sometimes, when an insurance company is saying this isn't worth fixing, they're going, but it's just on the side, it's just the door and that side mirror.
Yeah.
And they're looking at it going, we start adding this stuff up before it's even installed, and the pieces are so expensive. And
Certainly.
those airbags could be like $3,000 each
Certainly.
for some of them.
The reverse situation is where they do insist on doing the work, and you know the vehicle won't be whole.
It's compromised.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole
and
sticky issue.
It's, and often going in, the initial appraisal is a low ball because they don't know everything. They haven't taken the car apart. And we've had cases where, it starts at $12,000, it ends at 17 or 16, and that's more than the consumer's payout would have been on the car. And the owner of the car is unhappy because it now has a $16,000 claim in its history. And because it's complex, there's a lot of little parts. Sometimes the car doesn't perform quite as well as before.
Yeah, certainly.
And that car history is a big thing because somebody will know.
Yeah.
And most of us know $2,000 or $3,000 is no big deal in a repair. But 16, you're like, I'm not touching it. And we still haven't solved that value. You don't get the value back. You get
No,
your
you're
car
going to be
repaired.
owning the vehicle for a good long time.
Yeah.
until,
Yeah, that's probably the most diplomatic way I've heard it put.
Yeah.
We'll be back after this break with more Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Crown and Omvic. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by Omvic, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by Omvic, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm here with Georgini, with President of the APA, and Chris Muir is our mechanic, and we're extending the insurance conversation into the area of repair. Now, let's talk about OEM, original equipment manufacturer. When you take your car in to get it repaired, how do you insist on OEM, or do you? Does it matter? And where your insurance company only cover a certain thing? So I'm throwing this out there. You guys can just play toss-up.
Well, the basic rule when you're having an insurance claim is like, kind, and quality to what you lost. So they have to put the vehicle back into the condition that it was originally. After a couple of years, your vehicle is not new anymore. So in theory, the principle is that not to get betterment, but to get what you lost. Could be a cheaper aftermarket part.
But I would say if I have an OEM something and that something's broken, I would say you replace like with like. But that's where it falls apart because of wear.
So if you can get it, you get an endorsement on your policy that for a certain number of years you're paying a little more, so that the company will, the insurer will specify brand new parts from the original supplier. When they can, they will try and save very significant money by taking aftermarket parts. Insurance company tells you they won't specify the parts if they're not as good as the original, but it's not true. Often body shops will tell you the fit and the finish is not quite the same as new. They have to do more work to get it to fit. They may have to do more work to prepare it for painting and rust proofing as well.
Okay, so from your end, Chris, OEM parts, is there a reason people should really want them, or is there very reputable, good aftermarket parts that aren't OEM?
It depends. It depends on what you're doing. For body panels, the fit and finish you cannot match OEM in the aftermarket. Everything
the
aftermarket.
certified?
I find that everything aftermarket requires a little bit more massaging than if it's an OEM part.
So you're paying for
Obviously, the
labor.
manufacturer, it's all tolerance. Can a good body guy make it look like it was OEM? Absolutely, he can. As far as aftermarket parts, provided it's a reputable aftermarket company that provided the part, it can meet or exceed the original equipment that's on the car. There's a lot of stuff in the aftermarket where the aftermarket company has taken the component, updated it, and still sold it for less than the OEM equipment.
So how do we find out?
A lot of the time it's researching what the name brands are that they've put on the vehicle, seeing any history of it, and having some experience in the field. For consumer, it's a real blind.
Right, you'd have no agency. At most, your body shop, if they're willing to have the car tied up while they're arguing with the adjuster, because sometimes they don't want to do that either, that's their money, might be able to stand up for you or tell you, listen, call your insurer and ask for a little extra allowance for this or that. It rarely happens. In many cases also, when you're doing body work, it's at what's called a preferred shop. So that's a shop that relies on that insurer for a good chunk of their business. And they're unlikely to take an
Adversarial stand
Correct.
against the insurer.
right.
So this
Where
is,
we see this come up, by the way, is collector vehicles or high-end vehicles, because there the customers are, first of all, feel more entitled, and secondly, are more committed to their vehicle. They want it to maintain its value. So they may be involved, and in some cases might even be willing to pay pay the difference to get better quality type of repair. But for most people, don't want to shell out beyond their deductible for an insurance repair.
is this a significant problem? Like, are we lowering the quality? Like, I'm thinking
depends.
I'm driving around a well-fixed car, and there's a chance it might not be.
Unfortunately, it depends where you go to.
Okay.
The quality of work is dependent on the quality of the shop that you take the vehicle to. I can't comment on shops that are dependent on the insurance company or preferred shops or anything else like that because I don't know their business personally. I have my preferred shops that I will bring my stuff to, and I've had arguments with my insurance company in the event of a collision saying, I don't care that you prefer your shop and that there's no warranty if I go here. The shop itself will provide me the warranty, and they'll do the repair properly. And it was another thing where the shop had to go to bat in order to ensure the insurer didn't remove the car before I was properly compensated for it. So picking the right shop to fight for you is a big part of that puzzle.
And so
Lorraine,
part of this is picking the right shop years before. Find a good mechanic, stick with them, so that it's not during a crisis that you're looking for somebody you trust.
Body shop is tricky because
is.
you
We
actually
don't use
don't need
them.
them until you can't deal without them.
See, I
right?
ask my mechanics, though, where
And
the
that's,
like mechanics I've had for 25 years, I trust them as well to recommend me to somewhere else. And when
Completely.
they go take it here, I go, okay.
Yep.
I don't look at Yelp. I don't do any of that. I take it where
So
they tell
what
me.
we've found for what's called a specialized service, like mechanical repair or body repair, asking the consumer is notoriously unreliable. The kind of things they evaluate was the car ready on time? Did I have it at 5 o'clock?
Coffee.
Was it clean? Coffee maybe is
They have coffee in
exaggerated.
the
although,
lobby.
yeah, was the waiting area, was the guy nice to me at the counter?
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with the quality of the work, or very little. But other experts, particularly who don't compete directly, those are a very good way to check. And ideally, before you absolutely need the service, the one person you shouldn't believe is the person who's coming for the tow.
oh, no.
Yeah.
So you know that if it's an emergency towing service, most likely that's, you don't want to take their referral for a repair.
To be quite honest, anything like that, if you don't have an impound yard that you would trust, a dealer, something like that, have your car towed home.
Yeah.
And then have it
nobody
towed
thinks
to
of
a
that because
shop.
you're in
It's a
shock.
good idea. Yeah, you are in shock. We
Yeah,
talked
but
about
it's
this.
actually a good idea. And even your insurer, although they may give you a hassle because it's a second tow, they may also thank you because they're often
it,
held hostage too. Earlier you mentioned what repair should we be afraid of. I'll tell you, it's not the insurance paid repair because there is some oversight. It's the vehicles that are written off. Some of them are not necessarily declared salvage, but make their way back into the market and they're rebuilt, yeah. There is a provincial inspection process. They're supposed to look at the vehicle and make sure it meets standards. We've definitely found in British Columbia, to a lesser degree in Ontario, and many other provinces, somebody's getting paid off.
So we just shouldn't be involved in collisions.
Oh.
You're welcome for that information, viewers. That's all the time we have for Lemonade. I'd like to thank Georgini and Chris Muir and our insurance people at the top of the hour. And thanks to you, viewers.